Hi and welcome. I'm Midnight Truth, and it's so nice to have you here tonight. Wherever you are right now, whether you're in bed, lie on the couch, or just looking for a quiet moment, I want you to know this time is for you. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe out, feel the weight of the day start to fade. Let your mind settle. Let your body relax, and let yourself simply be. There's no rush, no pressure, just this calm, quiet moment. If you like, you can close your eyes and imagine yourself in a peaceful place. Maybe it's a cozy room with soft, warm lighting. Or maybe it's under a starry sky, with a gentle breeze brushing against you. Wherever you feel safe and calm, let yourself drift there. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time is it there? Tonight's story is gentle and soothing, perfect to carry you into a deep, restful sleep. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. I never thought I'd end up here. 37, recently divorced, broke, and alone, moving into a house that creaked more than my old bones after a sleepless night. But life had its way of grinding you down until you settled for whatever shelter you could find. And that's exactly what this place was. Shelter. It was a crooked little two-story house tucked at the far end of a dead-end street, surrounded by gnarled trees that always looked like they were leaning in just a little too close. The paint had long since peeled from its wooden bones, leaving behind a faded shell of gray and brown. But it was cheap, cheaper than anything I'd seen in this town. That should have been my first clue. The moving truck dropped off my boxes and left before I could even thank the driver. I stood there on the porch for a while, just staring at the front door like it might bite me. The key was cold in my hand. It slid into the lock easily, too easily, and the door creaked open on its own, like it had been waiting for me. The smell hit me first. Old wood, dust, and something else, something faint, metallic, and sour. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to the house being empty for a long time. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me, and for a moment, it felt like the house exhaled, as if I had disturbed something that had been sleeping. The first day passed in a blur of unpacking. The living room was small, with a cracked fireplace and wallpaper that peeled at the edges like it was trying to escape. Upstairs were two bedrooms, one I'd use, the other for storage. The bathroom was narrow, the mirror above the sink tarnished and spotted. Every floorboard moaned under my weight, and every door stuck just a little before opening. I told myself it had character. That night, I laid in bed listening to the wind rattle the old window panes. The house groaned with age, each creak like a whisper. I heard something knock from the hallway, a soft tapping like someone rapping their knuckles against the wall. I froze. Listen. Silence. It was just an old house. That's what I kept telling myself. Old houses made noises. The pipes, the wood, the wind, all perfectly normal. The next morning, I met the neighbor while checking the mailbox. Mrs. Elwood. She was in her 60s, hunched over with time, her eyes sharp and a little too curious. "You're the new tenant?" she asked, squinting at me. "Yeah, just moved in yesterday." She nodded slowly. "Place has been empty a while. Last guy didn't last long." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh." Left in the middle of the night. Didn't even come back for his stuff. Said he heard voices. Footsteps upstairs. Nonsense like that. She waved a bony hand, as if brushing away a cobweb. "These old houses, they talk. You'll see." I forced a smile and laughed politely, but something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. She held my gaze for a second too long, before turning and shuffling back to her house without another word. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt off, like it was watching me. I know how that sounds, but I kept feeling eyes on me, especially when I turned out the lights. I laid in bed, covers pulled to my chin, listening. At first, it was faint like footsteps. Not loud, not heavy, but steady. I held my breath. There it was again. Thump, thump, thump across the upstairs hallway. My heart slammed in my chest. I sat up, straining my ears. Nothing. I got up, opened the door, and looked down the hall. Empty. I checked every room, even the attic door. Nothing. No signs of anyone, nothing out of place. I went back to bed, chalking it up to my imagination. Maybe Mrs. Elwood's story had gotten into my head, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had walked past my door. The following days were quiet. I got into a routine: coffee, job hunting, walking the neighborhood. I tried to ignore the sounds at night, the knocking, the creaking, the way the air got cold around 3 a.m. sharp. No matter how high I cranked the thermostat. One night, I dreamed I was in the attic, standing in front of an old mirror. My reflection smiled at me, but I wasn't smiling. It mouthed something I couldn't hear. I woke up drenched in sweat, the room freezing. My breath fogged the air. I checked the attic the next morning. There was a mirror. I swear I hadn't seen it before. The frame was blackened with age, and the glass was so dusty I could barely see my face. But something about it felt wrong, like it had no business being there. I almost covered it up with a sheet, but something stopped me. That evening, I found a strange marking on the wooden floor near the attic entrance. It looked like a symbol, a circle with jagged lines running through it. Not scratched, not drawn, burned into the wood. I stared at it for a long time before backing away and closing the attic door. That night, the footsteps were louder, heavier. They didn't stop outside my room. They passed by, went downstairs. I heard the kitchen drawer open, the one where I kept the knives. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I laid there until the sun came up. And still, I stayed. Part of me didn't want to believe. I kept telling myself it was the stress, the divorce, the new town, the loneliness. But another part of me, deep down, knew something wasn't right. This house wasn't just old. It was waiting. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. When the sun finally rose, I sat at the kitchen table like I had the morning before, the journal from the basement resting open in front of me. The words were etched into my mind. Asterisk. It sits at the foot of my bed at night. Asterisk, I had felt it. I knew what the writer meant now. Not metaphor, not imagination. Real, solid, present. Something had been there. My eyes kept drifting to the basement door, which I'd bolted shut. But the bolt was old and loose, and I couldn't trust it to keep out something that didn't seem to care much for doors or walls. I went out again. I didn't want to stay in that house a second longer than necessary. I didn't have many friends in town. I'd only moved here a few weeks ago, but the small antique shop at the end of the street had always caught my eye. It felt safer than anywhere else. The shop was dim, cluttered with all sorts of odd items. Faded portraits, dolls missing eyes, clocks that didn't tick. The air smelled like old pages and dust. Behind the counter stood a man in his 60s, hunched and pale, with sharp eyes that followed me as I walked in. "You new to the neighborhood?" he asked, voice thin and dry. I nodded. "Yeah, just moved into the old white house down near the woods." His expression shifted, just slightly, but I saw it, the recognition, the tension. He looked down at the counter. "You shouldn't have..." I stepped closer. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached beneath the counter and pulled out an old photograph. Black and white, faded. It showed a family standing in front of my house. A man, a woman, and a young girl, all stiff and unsmiling. "That house has always had a history," he said. "First it was whispers, then it was screams. Every owner is left in a hurry or worse." I stared at the photo. The little girl in the picture, her eyes seemed different, almost hollow, like they'd been scratched out. "Do you know who lived there before me?" I asked. He gave a slow nod. "Last one was a guy named Darren Pope, real estate agent, moved in alone, lasted 3 weeks. One night, he ran into this very shop barefoot, bleeding, shouting something about the walls moving and a woman crawling on the ceiling." My throat tightened. "What happened to him?" "Psych ward," the old man said quietly. "Still there, far as I know. Doesn't talk much anymore." I left the shop shaken. Clutching the photo he insisted I take. Back at the house, the air was still. The silence had weight to it. I kept glancing at the corners of the ceiling, at the mirror in the hallway. I swore the light bulb over the stairs had started flickering every time I walked under it. I made myself a sandwich I didn't eat and went into the living room. The journal still lay open on the coffee table. I flipped through more pages, past the frantic English entries back into the pages with symbols and diagrams. Many looked like ritual circles, each more complicated than the last. One had a drawing of a shadow figure with arms far too long, and what looked like scratches drawn around its feet. Beside the figure, the writer had scrawled a single line, asterisk, the keeper between rooms. Do not invite, asterisk. I slammed the book shut. That night, I put salt in front of the door, like I'd seen in movies, not because I believed it would work, but because I needed something, anything, to make me feel like I wasn't helpless. Around 1:47 a.m., I woke to a low, dragging sound in the hallway, like someone slowly pulling something heavy across the floor. I grabbed my phone, opened the flashlight app, and crept to the bedroom door. My heart was hammering so loudly I thought it would give me away. The dragging continued, slow, rhythmic, from the far end of the hallway. I opened the door. The hallway was pitch dark, except for a faint trail of muddy footprints, leading from the attic door to my bedroom. I followed them in the other direction, phone shaking in my hand. They stopped abruptly at the base of the hallway mirror. I stared at it. There was no reflection. I was standing right in front of it, but the mirror showed only the hallway, empty. Then the glass began to fog. Words appeared, written in the condensation from the inside. Asterisk, why did you wake me? Asterisk. I stumbled backward, tripped, and fell hard to the floor. My phone clattered away and the screen cracked. The flashlight died. In total darkness, I heard the sound again, dragging, closer, and then breathing, slow, wet, right above me. I crawled backward, my hand scraping against the floor, and darted into the bathroom. I slammed the door, locked it, and flipped on the light. I waited. Nothing happened for a long, breathless minute. Then something scraped across the other side of the door. Long, sharp, almost curious. A moment later, silence returned. I didn't leave the bathroom until sunrise. When I finally came out, the mirror in the hallway was shattered. The glass lay in sharp pieces across the floor. My reflection stared up at me from every fragment, but one piece showed only black. That evening, desperate, I opened the journal again in search of something, anything, that might explain how to stop this. I found a page near the end with a series of instructions. A barrier may be created, but the symbols must be perfect. One error invites it in. One crack in the circle, and it is already inside. I turned the page. It was blank, but as I stared at it, letters began to bleed into the page, slowly, like ink seeping from underneath. Asterisk, you're reading again. Asterisk, asterisk, good. Asterisk, asterisk, keep reading. Asterisk. The house groaned as if it were laughing. I didn't read another page of that journal for 2 days. I couldn't. It sat on the coffee table, closed now, but it felt like it was watching me, like something inside it wanted me to keep going, not to learn, not to save myself, but for entertainment, for its amusement. I started leaving all the lights on in the house. Every bulb burned day and night. I couldn't stand the shadows anymore. Every flicker of movement in the corner of my vision made my chest tighten, my breath catch. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I was just waiting for the sound, the breathing, the dragging. It always came after midnight. But that night, something changed. At 3:13 a.m., I was lying in bed, eyes wide open, blanket clutched to my chest, staring at the door, when I heard a voice. Soft, barely a whisper. It was coming from under the bed. Are you awake? I froze. The voice was like a child's, but not. There was something too precise about it. Too calm. Like someone imitating a child rather than being one. I didn't answer. I didn't breathe. It spoke again. Come look under. I want to show you something. My eyes filled with tears. Not from fear, but from some deep, terrible instinct. A part of me that knew if I moved, even slightly, something awful would happen. The floorboard to my left creaked. Just once. I stared at the ceiling. My body was ice. Okay, the voice said. I'll show you anyway. Suddenly, The mattress dipped near my feet, like someone had climbed up. I bolted. I didn't grab anything, not my phone, not the journal, not my shoes. I just ran, down the stairs, through the living room, past the basement door, which I noticed was cracked open, out the front door. I ran to the neighbor's house, Mrs. Lorna, the one who had warned me early on in her strange, hushed way. I didn't care that it was almost 4 a.m. I banged on her door like my life depended on it. She opened it in her robe, confused, but when she saw my face, she pulled me inside without a word. We sat in her kitchen, silent, for a long time. I wrapped my hands around a mug of tea I didn't touch. She didn't ask anything until the sun began to rise. "Did you see it?" she asked finally. I nodded. She sighed like someone mourning an inevitability. "I told you," she whispered. "That house doesn't like to be ignored." I told her everything. The journal, the mirror, the voice under the bed, the photo from the antique shop. Her face went pale at that last part. "You saw the girl's face?" she asked. I nodded again. "She never had one," she said, "in any photo. That's how it started. People said she was born without a soul, that her father, he tried to bring her one, through rituals, through doors." Lorna stood up, walked to an old drawer, and pulled out a manila envelope. She handed it to me. Inside were news clippings, old, brittle. Headlines like "Local Man Found Dead After Ritual Gone Wrong" and "Child Missing from Sealed Room." One article mentioned the house specifically by address. He opened something. Lorna said everyone knew it. He tried to call something in and give it a name, but it didn't come alone. It brought others, and when he failed to contain it, it didn't leave. She leaned closer. It still hasn't. I left her house as the sky turned blue. The air felt heavier now, like the house had noticed I'd escaped and was waiting, annoyed. I could feel it watching from the upstairs window, but I had to go back. The journal was still inside, and part of me, some stupid part, believed it might hold the key to ending this. When I stepped to the front door, the smell hit me. Wet earth, like freshly dug soil, like something had tunneled its way up from underneath the house. I followed the scent to the basement. The door was wide open now. I stood at the top of the stairs, staring into the pitch black. The smell was stronger here. And something else, faint scratching, like nails dragging slowly across concrete. I should have run, but I couldn't. I descended the stairs, each step creaking louder than the last. My foot hit something soft halfway down. I looked down. The journal. It was open, its pages fluttering, though there was no breeze. I knelt, picked it up, and turned to the last page, the one that had spoken to me. This time, the ink appeared faster. Asterisk, too late to run. Asterisk, asterisk, too late to close the door. Asterisk, asterisk, it's already behind you. Asterisk, I turned. Nothing there. I bolted up the stairs, but something caught my ankle. Cold fingers, wrapped around bone. I kicked, panic, screamed. I didn't look down. I just ran. Back in the living room, I slammed the basement door shut and pushed the heaviest bookshelf I could find against it. Then the lights went out. All of them. I stood in silence, waiting. Then I heard it, breathing. Behind me, slow. Inhale, exhale. And then, from somewhere close, so close it might have been inside my head, I heard the child's voice again. "You're reading again. You're helping it grow." That was last night. I haven't left the house since. The journal now has new pages. Pages I haven't written. Pages that describe everything I've done. What I've said, what I've dreamed. It knows me now. And I think it's waiting for me to finish reading. I spent the entire day sitting in the corner of the living room. The journal placed on the coffee table, like it was some kind of bomb that might go off if I touched it. I kept every light in the house on, lamps, overheads, even the flashlight app on my phone running on the couch next to me. I didn't care if the electric bill tripled. Darkness felt like an invitation now. By afternoon, I started to notice something strange. The journal, it had moved. Just a few inches, nothing dramatic. But I had marked its place earlier with the edge of a coaster. Now it was over the line, closer to me, and worse, it was open again, a page I hadn't turned. The ink was darker this time, Messier, like someone had written it in a hurry, and the message wasn't poetic or cryptic anymore. It simply read, "Stop pretending this isn't real." I slammed the cover shut and ran it up to the attic. I didn't want it anywhere near me. I found an old trunk with rusted hinges, stuffed the book inside, locked it, and shoved it under a pile of forgotten blankets. I even nailed the attic door shut from inside before climbing down and sealing it from below with furniture. But that night, just after 1 a.m., I woke up to the sound of pages flipping. Soft, crisp, from the foot of my bed. I turned on the lamp. Nothing there. But the attic door, the one I barricaded and sealed, it was wide open. The blankets I'd piled on the trunk were scattered across the floor like something had burst out. The journal was back, sitting on my nightstand. And this time, it had a new page, one I hadn't seen before. A sketch. It was a drawing of me, sitting in bed, eyes wide in fear, looking at the journal. In the picture, a shadow stood behind me. Tall, no face, just a black void where its head should be. I couldn't take it anymore. I left the house again, barefoot, shaking, and walked aimlessly through the neighborhood until the sun rose. I didn't go to Lorna's. I didn't want her dragged into this. I sat on a bench outside the old library downtown, watching birds fight over trash until the doors opened. Inside, I searched every record they had. I dug through dusty folders, local newspapers on microfilm, anything tied to the address of that cursed house. I found a few things. The original owner, Abel Ride, that was his name. He'd lived there in the late 1800s, a widower with one child, a daughter named Miriam. The town didn't talk much about them, but I found a single archive column from a church newsletter. Asterisk, pray for the child in the old house. She does not sleep. She does not speak. She watches the walls and laughs at night. The father does not attend service. He builds altars in the cellar. Asterisk, there were no birth records for Miriam. No death certificate either. Just disappearance. I found more mentions in town rumors. Babysitters who went missing, neighbors complaining of voices, local pastors quitting without notice. Eventually, the house had been sold in foreclosure after Abel's sudden death, but his body was never found. Just a circle of bloodstains in the basement, and symbols on the floor, painted in ash. The last article was dated 1898, the final sentence. Asterisk, the door he opened cannot be closed. Asterisk, I left the library and went home, heart hammering. I knew I had to finish reading the journal. Whatever was happening to me, hiding from it wasn't working. Maybe the answer was buried in those cursed pages. Maybe there was a way to seal the door again. When I got back, the front door was ajar. I didn't remember leaving it that way. Inside, everything was dark. I flipped the light switch. Nothing. The power was out. A low hum filled the air, like static. I called out, half expecting someone to answer. No one did, but I heard something else. Scraping. From upstairs. Something dragging across the floor. I climbed the steps slowly, using the weak glow of my phone. In the hallway outside my bedroom, the journal was lying open. Next to it, scrawled in thick black ink across the wooden floorboards, were the words, read to the end. I picked up the journal with trembling hands. The next entry wasn't from Abel Ride. It was from someone else. She took my name. It began, she needed a voice. The mirror was only the first gate. The attic was the second. The body was the third. She wears it now. She walks when the lights are off. She watches from the corners. She is not alone anymore. My fingers turned the page before I could stop them. The handwriting changed again. This time it looked like mine. Like something had copied my style down to the loops and crooked T's. You brought her back. You read enough. Now she's yours. Suddenly, the light on my phone flickered and went out. The hallway dropped into pitch black. I heard breathing right behind me, but it wasn't a child's voice this time. It was deeper, like something had swallowed its own throat and was trying to speak through bone. A whisper scraped against my neck. You finished the page. Now we begin. The door to the attic creaked open on its own, and from the darkness above, something descended. Not footsteps, not crawling. It moved like fog, like mold growing along the walls. I backed away, step by step, heart exploding in my chest. I dropped the journal. The voice said one more thing before everything went silent. I needed your fear to wake. That's where everything goes blank. I woke up the next morning in bed. Daylight. The journal was gone. The attic door was sealed again. And the only sign anything had happened was a deep bruise on my ankle, right where those fingers had grabbed me. The house was quiet now. Too quiet, like it was watching, waiting for me to read again. It's been 3 days since the journal vanished. 3 days of unbearable silence. But not peace. The house feels heavier now. The air, the walls, even the light that filters through the dusty windows. It's all off, like the house is holding its breath. I don't know how to describe it except to say, I'm never truly alone anymore, even when I think I am. I've stopped sleeping in the bedroom. I moved everything I could into the living room, mattress, lamp, blankets. The upstairs hallway feels wrong, like it stretches further than it should. I can't explain it, but I swear I walked up there yesterday, and it took longer than usual, like time bent a little. I tried reaching out to Lorna again. I called her, but it went straight to voicemail. When I walked by her place, the curtains were drawn shut. I thought about knocking, but something stopped me. Something in my gut whispered, she's not the same anymore. So I stayed away. And then yesterday afternoon, I found something new. Behind the kitchen cupboards, scratches, claw marks, but not like an animal. These were too long, too even, for long lines in the wood, running vertically from top to bottom, like someone or something had stood there, patiently dragging its fingers through the grain. Beneath those marks, in small letters, were the words, "It remembers you." That night, the dream started again. But this time, it wasn't the girl with the slit mouth or the figure in the hallway. It was me. I stood in the basement of the house, alone, barefoot on the cold cement floor. I looked around and saw candles, all lit, flickering wildly. Symbols painted in blood circled me. And there, in front of me, knelt someone, back turned, hair long and matted, hands bound behind them. I walked closer, and when they turned around, I saw my own face. Mouth sewn shut, eyes wide, pleading. I woke up choking, drenched in sweat, hands shaking uncontrollably. I'm losing my mind. I thought leaving the house might help. I grabbed my keys and drove, anywhere away from that place. I ended up at a bar 2 towns over, somewhere quiet. I ordered a drink, and when the bartender asked if I was new around here, I laughed. That's when the guy at the far end of the counter turned and said, "You in the Ride House?" I froze. He had a weathered face, beard graying at the chin, eyes sharp like he'd seen too much. "You know it?" I asked. "Used to live next door to it," he said. "Years ago, before it got boarded up. Place has a history." I leaned closer, desperate. "What kind of history?" He took a long sip of his drink. "People move in. Never last long. One guy, back in the 70s, claimed the mirrors talked to him. Another said the floors whispered names. Last one, before he was a woman, heard her screaming one night. By the time the cops came, she'd smashed every window with her bare hands. Said the house wanted her blood. I felt my stomach churn. What happened to her? Locked up in a hospital. Still there, last I heard. Won't speak a word. Just write symbols on the walls." He paused. "Same ones you've probably seen by now." I left the bar and drove home in silence. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tight they ached. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long, twisted shadows across the road. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something on the porch. A package, wrapped in old brown paper, no return address. Inside it was a journal, but it was different. The leather looked older now, brittle, and the cover, which used to be blank, now had a symbol etched into it, for jagged lines crossing over a circle. I didn't bring it inside. I couldn't. Instead, I went to the backyard and tried to burn it, but it wouldn't burn. The flame lit the edges, but the pages never blackened. It just sat there, smoking like it was mocking me. After half an hour, I gave up and buried it instead, 6 feet down in the dirt behind the shed. That night, I heard digging. From outside, I didn't look. I couldn't. But the next morning, the journal was back, on my pillow, open to a new page. This one didn't have words, just a crude charcoal drawing. Me, standing in the yard, shovel in hand. Behind me, a figure watching from the woods, its arms too long, its face a smudge. The next few days blurred together. The scratching in the walls started up again. The smell of rotting flowers filled the air. I heard footsteps at night, slow, deliberate. And when I checked the security camera on my porch, it was gone, just wires dangling. I started talking to myself, whispering prayers I didn't believe in. I set up mirrors around the house, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever was hunting me. And then last night, I saw her again, not in a dream. She was standing in the hallway, the little girl, hair tangled over her face, arms limp at her sides. But this time, she wasn't staring at me. She was staring into the mirror. And in the mirror, she was smiling, not the kind of smile a child gives when she's happy. This was something else, something full of hunger. She whispered one word before vanishing. Closer. When I looked back at the mirror, my own reflection was gone. Only hers remained, smiling. I didn't sleep after that, not even for a minute. I sat in the corner of the living room, back against the cold wall, watching the mirror, waiting, hoping to see my reflection again. But all I saw was her, that little girl, standing still inside the glass, like it was her world now, not mine. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stared and smiled. By morning, she was gone. But the mirror was different. The glass looked warped now, like water trapped behind it. And my own reflection? Faint, like I was fading. I covered it with a sheet. I've never been afraid of mirrors before. But now I can't walk past one without holding my breath. Later that day, I decided to visit the town library. I needed answers, not stories, not rumors. Records, facts. The librarian was a woman named Helen. She looked like she'd been working there since the 50s. Tight bun, glasses, cardigan. She barely looked up when I asked about my address. Old house, she said. Had some trouble over the years. I asked if there were any articles or records about it. She sighed. You'll want the archive room. Downstairs. The room was dark, lit by one flickering fluorescent tube. Rows of filing cabinets, newspaper clippings, dust. I found the house's name in an old property ledger, 1417 Ride Street. It used to belong to a man named Elias Thorne, a reclusive professor of folklore and theology, according to papers. He purchased a home in 1921 and lived there until 1946. Then, something strange, he wasn't listed as deceased, just presumed missing. No body, no will, just gone. I found a newspaper article from that year. Local professor vanishes without a trace. The article mentioned strange smells coming from the basement, odd chanting at night, and neighbors who swore they saw shadows moving behind the curtains even when Thorne was out of town. One woman claimed to have seen him digging in the backyard under a blood-red moon, digging with his bare hands. Then I found something worse. A report filed by the sheriff's department a few months after his disappearance. The new owners had moved in, a family of 4. They left after 12 days. The father was found wandering the woods behind the house, barefoot, mumbling the same phrase over and over again. The veil is thin. I copied everything I could and brought it home. But the moment I stepped inside, the lights flickered and the air was freezing. I checked the thermostat. Completely dead. I walked into the living room and found the sheet pulled off the mirror. The girl was back. This time, her hands were pressed against the inside of the glass, and her mouth was moving. No sound, just silent words I couldn't read. And then, just for a second, her eyes rolled back, white, lifeless. and my own reflection stepped backward and vanished. I stumbled away, heart hammering, and knocked over the journal. It fell open to a page I hadn't seen before. It was written in Elias Thorne's hand. The ritual opens a door, but it does not close it. Once invited, it remembers its host. It remembers everything. Below that, a symbol I recognize now. The same one from the package. The same one etched into the front of the journal. The one I'd seen in the dream circle. There were instructions. A ritual. Simple, almost childish. Candles. Salt. A chant. I should have burned it again. But I didn't. Instead, I found myself in the basement that night. Circle drawn. Candles lit. I don't know why I did it. Curiosity? Desperation? Maybe both. I repeated the chant. The air grew heavier with each word, the flames dancing wildly. And then, silence. A silence so thick it roared in my ears. And then knocking from behind the basement wall. Not the door, the wall, for slow knocks. And on the final one, the wall cracked. Hairline, but there, and something moved inside it. I fell backward, tripping over the salt line. The candles blew out all at once, and in the dark, I heard breathing. Not mine. Something deep, animalistic, hungry. I scrambled upstairs and locked the basement door. But now I hear knocking from under floorboards. Wherever I go in the house, it follows. For knocks, always for. Even in the shower, in the kitchen, in my sleep. And last night, I woke up to find salt sprinkled across my chest in the shape of the same symbol. I didn't put it there. Someone or something did. I'm terrified to fall asleep, but I'm even more terrified of what's waiting when I'm awake. And now, for the first time since I moved in, I can feel someone breathing on the back of my neck even as I write this. If I turn around, I don't think I'll be alone. The knocking hasn't stopped. It comes in pulses, for knocks, always for. Sometimes soft, almost hesitant, like fingertips testing the wood. Other times it's violent, as if something is trying to break through. Last night, it came from the walls of my bedroom. Tonight, it came from under my bed. I don't check anymore. I just lie there, frozen, pretending I don't hear it, pretending none of this is real. But it is. I know it is. After what happened in the basement, I try to pretend it was a dream. Maybe I imagined the cracks, the voice, the eyes. But the truth keeps forcing itself into every corner of this house. The mirror in the living room has started fogging up even when it's not cold. I wipe it and there's no reflection. Just that girl. Always her. She never blinks. She never moves. But now I think she's getting closer. I visited my neighbor, Mr. Wilkins. Again, I needed to talk to someone who might understand. Someone who wouldn't laugh it off. He looked older this time. Thinner, paler. Like the house next door was draining the life out of him too. When I told him about the journal, the knocking, the mirror, he didn't look surprised. He looked sad. I should have warned you, he said, shaking his head. But no one ever listens. I asked him what he meant. The house remembers, he said. It never forgets who comes in. It watches you, learns you, then it starts to bleed into you, into your mind. I asked about Elias Thorne. He paused, then stood slowly and went to a cabinet. He returned with an old photo, black and white, faded at the edges. It showed a man standing in front of the house. Pale suit, long coat, narrow eyes that didn't quite match the smile on his face. That's Thorne, Wilkins said. He wasn't just a professor. He was something else, something worse. He believed in the thin places, the cracks between our world and something older. What happened to him? I asked. No one knows. Some say he opened a door and went through it. Others say something came through and took him. I told him about the girl in the mirror, about the symbols, the salt, the feeling that I'm never alone anymore. Wilkins looked me dead in the eye. You need to get out. I told him I tried. The house wouldn't let me. I don't mean move, he said. I mean sever, break the connection, before it roots itself in you. I asked how. He hesitated, then gave me a name, Marion Griggs. a folklorist who used to correspond with Thorn. She lives in the hills, alone. People say she's touched by something, but she knows how to deal with this kind of thing. He scribbled a rough address on a scrap of paper. Find her, he said, and don't wait. The longer you stay, the harder it is to leave. I drove out the next morning, following the winding roads that curved through the hills like veins under pale skin. The trees got thicker, the sunlight dimmer. It felt like I was being swallowed. Eventually, I found a cabin. Small, wooden, covered in charms and feathers and hanging bones. The kind of place that screams turn back. But I knocked. Marion was old, but sharp. Her eyes were milky, but I swear they saw through me. I told her everything. The dreams, the mirror, the journal. When I mentioned Thorn's name, she hissed softly and lit a bundle of sage. Fool man, she muttered. He thought knowledge made him safe. Thought symbols could tame what's beneath. I asked her what I was dealing with. She gave me a name, one I still don't know how to pronounce. Nahmet. Not a demon, not a ghost, a presence. Something ancient, buried, worshipped in the silence between stars. She said Thorn's rituals didn't summon it. They woke it, and when he vanished, it stayed behind, hungry. I asked if it could be banished. She said no, but you can send it back to sleep. She gave me instructions. A cleansing ritual, not to destroy it, but to confuse it, to mask my scent, make it lose its grip. You'll only have one chance, she said, and if you fail, it won't just haunt you. It'll inhabit you. She handed me a charm made from bone and salt, wrapped in red thread. Place this above your bed. Don't let it touch the floor. And don't, asterisk don't asterisk, break the thread. I drove back, charm in hand, heart pounding. The house was darker than when I left. I walked in and knew something had changed. The smell hit me first, like rot soaked in old rain. The mirror was uncovered again. The girl was closer. I could see the whites of her eyes. I hurried to the bedroom, nailed the charm above the headboard, and prepared the ritual. Candles, symbols drawn in ash. Incense burned in the shape of a spiral. And then I began to chant. The air turned heavy. My ears rang. The shadows shifted along the walls. And the knocking started again. Not 4 this time. 5. Then 6. It was coming. The flame of the candle in front of me shot upward, turned blue, and extinguished. Then the cold hit, like stepping into a blizzard. And behind me, I swear, I felt something whisper my name. I didn't look back. I finished the last line of the chant, shouted it, and slammed my hands to the floor. Then silence. Total dead silence. The kind that presses against your skin. The air felt lighter. The rot was gone. The mirror was empty. I collapsed, slept for 12 hours straight. When I woke up, the charm was still intact. The house was quiet, but it's not over. I know it's not, because just a few minutes ago, as I walked past a mirror, there was no reflection at all. It was subtle at first. Little things. I'd go to turn off a light and find it already off. A door I clearly closed would be cracked open. My phone alarm wouldn't go off, even though I checked it 5 times the night before. I started leaving sticky notes for myself, reminders, little sanity markers to make sure I wasn't just forgetting things. But the sticky notes began to move. I would leave one on the fridge that said check basement lock, and find it later stuck to the bathroom mirror, with the ink smudged like it had been handled by wet fingers. It wasn't just a mirror anymore either. Reflections in the windows began to shift. I'd glance outside and see the yard empty. Then in the reflection, I'd catch a figure standing among the trees, always facing the house, always watching. I wanted to believe the ritual worked, that the presence had gone dormant. But something inside me, something small and animal and old, kept whispering that it was still here, just hiding, waiting for me to get comfortable again. Marion had warned me. It wouldn't be gone, just confused. The charm over my bed would shield me for a while, but only if I followed the rules. No breaking the thread, no letting it touch the floor, and most importantly, never let it see your reflection. I thought I understood what she meant, but now I'm starting to think I didn't grasp it at all. The reflection isn't mine anymore. It's doing things I'm not doing. It smiles when I'm afraid. It moves a split second too late, like a bad puppet. I even caught it blinking when my eyes were wide open. I covered every mirror in the house. Duct-taped towels over the bathroom glass, the hallway mirror, even the microwave's black screen. But they come back. I'll walk into a room and find a mirror uncovered, the towel folded neatly on the floor as if someone placed it there with care. And the thing in the mirror is always closer. Last night, I dreamt I was trapped in the glass. I stood inside a foggy pane, screaming, pounding from the inside. And in the real world, or whatever was outside the glass, my body just watched, head tilted, smiling slightly. Then it leaned in and whispered, "I like it better here." I woke up with bruises on my knuckles. That morning, I called Marion again. I told her what was happening. There was a long pause before she said, "It's trying to replace you." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "You're serious?" "Yes," she said, "and it's close. Once it knows your habits, your speech, your memories, it will try to take your place in the world. That's what Namet does. It collects cells." I asked her how to stop it. "You need to seal the door. There's still a crack open, probably in the basement. That's where Thorn worked, right?" I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "There's a second ritual. A final one. It doesn't banish, but it locks. Think of it as shutting a vault door from your side. Once it's done, the thing on the other side can't reach you anymore. But be warned, if it's already inside, it might not want to leave quietly." She emailed me instructions. Pages scanned from an old, handwritten manuscript. Symbols. Words in a language I couldn't pronounce but felt wrong to say out loud. She also told me to find the gate. She said Thorn would have hidden it. It wouldn't be a literal door, but something symbolic. Something deeply personal. I went back into the basement that night. It was colder than before. I took the journal with me, flipping through the pages, looking for clues. One entry stood out, a sketch of a circle, drawn over and over until the ink bled through the paper. Beneath it, Thorn had written, "The eye sees even when closed. The circle must break." That's when I noticed it. On the floorboards, beneath the rug that had been there since I moved in, was a carved symbol, a perfect circle with an eye in the middle. The wood around it looked newer, as if someone had replaced the floor above the carving. The gate, it made sense. Thorn didn't open a literal door. He used symbolism, occult principles, the idea of an eye that always sees. An opening not in space, but in self. I prepared the ritual, drew the markings in chalk, lit the candles, spoke the words, and the house responded. The walls groaned like they were breathing. The lights flickered and dimmed, and I heard movement upstairs. Heavy, deliberate steps. I kept going. I had to. The symbols began to glow faintly, like they were pulling light from a room. Then, one by one, the candles blew out. The basement door slammed shut above me. I felt something behind me, breathing, close enough to fog the back of my neck. But I didn't stop. I read the final line of the ritual, pressed my palm to the center of the circle, and whispered, "Return." There was a crack, not a sound but a feeling, like the air splitting in two. Then silence, real silence, stillness. I stayed in the basement for hours, waiting for something to move, for another sound, another voice. But nothing came. Eventually, I went upstairs. The mirrors were still covered. The charm was intact, and the reflection was gone. No mimic, no flicker, just my face as it should be. I slept that night for the first time in weeks. And when I woke up, I thought maybe, just maybe. It was over until I looked at my phone and saw a photo I didn't take. It was me, sleeping, taken from the corner of a room. And in the photo, just beside my bed, there was something sitting in the shadows, smiling. I deleted the photo. At least, I thought I did. But when I checked my gallery a few minutes later, it was back. Same photo, same angle, same shadowy figure sitting next to my bed, hunched slightly as if leaning in toward me while I slept. This time, though, the timestamp had changed. It now read, today, 3:17 a.m. And I remembered waking up at 3:17, heart pounding, covered in sweat, with a pressure on my chest like something heavy had just climbed off me. I didn't sleep the next night, or the night after that. I kept every light in the house on, drank enough coffee to keep a corpse awake, and sat in the living room with a baseball bat in my hands. My phone stayed face up beside me, camera app open, ready to record. I felt like prey, like whatever had been behind the rituals. The diary, the shadows, wasn't locked away like Marion had hoped. It was free now, and it knew me, not just my habits or my face. It knew my fears, my weak spots. It was inside the corners of my thoughts, teasing me with half-heard whispers, phantom footsteps in rooms I hadn't entered, cold drafts slipping beneath the doors. At around 2:30 in the morning, something knocked on the front door. Just 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I didn't move, not at first. Then it knocked again, and I realized the peephole had been scratched out from the inside. Not broken, asterisk scratch star, dozens of tiny claw-like marks circling it, as if something had been watching through it from my side. I checked the windows. No sign of anyone. I turned off the lights and crept into the hallway, holding my breath as I got closer to the front door. Then came a voice, muffled, familiar. It was my own voice. "Let me in," it said calmly. "I'm locked out." I backed away, fast. The voice followed me through the walls, like it was inside the house already. "Come on, don't be like that. You need me. You always have." I ran into the kitchen and slammed the door behind me, locked it, stuffed a towel into the crack under the door. Then I heard laughter from upstairs, and I hadn't been upstairs since the ritual. I should have run, but I needed answers. I needed to know if it had ever left at all, or if it had just moved higher, watching from above, waiting for the right moment to drop down into my life again. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and climbed the steps slowly, the old wood moaning beneath my feet, like it didn't want to carry me. When I reached the top, the air was heavy, thicker. The hallway smelled like burned hair and something wet. I moved past the bathroom, past the second bedroom, toward the attic door. It was cracked open. The light inside was off, and something was moving, a shuffling sound, slow and dragging, like someone crawling over old papers and broken glass. I pushed the door open all the way. My flashlight flicked once, twice, then held. In the beam, I saw dozens of photos pinned to the walls. All of me, most of them from angles that didn't make sense, like they'd been taken from inside walls, behind furniture, underneath the bed. But it wasn't the photos that froze me. It was the figure in the corner. It looked like me, but wrong. Its skin was grayish and damp. Its hair stringy and matted like it had been soaked in dirty water. Its face twitched when I moved, like it was mimicking my fear. And its mouth didn't move like a human's. It stretched impossibly wide, revealing teeth that looked like broken bits of bone. I stepped back. It stood up, tall, too tall, and it whispered, not in words, but in a choking, breathy growl that felt like my own thoughts turned against me. "You opened the door. You let me in. You're just skin now." I turned and ran, tripping down the steps, barely catching myself before I cracked my head open on the landing. I didn't look back. I grabbed my car keys and sprinted for the door, but it was already unlocked, standing wide open. And outside, the street was gone. Only darkness, like the whole world had vanished. And in that silence behind me, a voice hissed, "There's nowhere left to go." But I didn't stop. I bolted through the doorway into the black, hoping somehow it would lead anywhere but here. And when I woke up, I was in bed, in my room. The light filtering through the window was soft, early morning. Had I dreamed it all? I sat up slowly, the sheets damp from sweat, heart still pounding. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and saw my phone on the floor. One new message. No sender. Just a single line of text. "You're not the original." And then I saw the reflection. In the dark screen of the phone, just for a second, asterisk my own face star. Smiling. But I wasn't. I didn't sleep that night either. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile. That thing, lurking in the reflection of my phone, grinning like it knew something I didn't. And worse, it felt like it was me. The voice was back in my head, quieter now but still there, like a persistent whisper threading through my thoughts. You're not the original. What did that even mean? I had spent all day running errands, trying to get back to some semblance of normal, even though everything in my life was telling me to run away. I checked the locks on every window, every door, even the attic door, but nothing felt right. It was as if the house itself was aware of me, watching every move, anticipating my next breath. I decided to go back to the attic. I had to. I needed to know what was going on, what the hell had been happening to me. There had to be an explanation. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe the isolation of being in this old house had taken its toll. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't ignore it. The attic door creaked open when I touched it. That same awful noise that made my skin crawl. But this time, I didn't hesitate. I stepped inside, phone flashlight in hand, and immediately the air grew colder. The smell of something old and rotten filled my nostrils, making me gag. The walls were still covered in those photos. But now there were more. Dozens of them, some new, some old. I could recognize myself in every single one. But the angles were off. Too many of them were taken while I was asleep. Others when I thought I was alone. Some even showed my face twisted in terror, like I was caught mid-scream. I walked deeper into the attic, my heart thundering in my chest, desperate to find something that would explain what was happening. I needed answers. I needed to feel like I wasn't going crazy. And that's when I found it, the journal. It was tucked under a pile of old, yellowed sheets, its leather cover cracked and worn. I felt the chill spread to my fingertips as I pulled it out. It looked ancient, its pages thin and fragile. But there was something about it, something that drew me in like a magnet. I opened the first page. The handwriting was jagged, frantic. Each word felt like it had been scratched onto the paper in a hurry. It took me a moment to make sense of it. But when I did, my blood ran cold. Asterisk, I've seen the door. It's real. It's open. I can feel it watching me. It whispers in my ear at night, telling me to let it in. I think it's already here. I'm scared. I don't know what I've done, but it's following me. It knows my name. It knows everything about me. I've seen in my reflection, and I think it's taking me now. I don't know if I'll be able to write this for much longer. I think it's already here. It's in my skin. Asterisk. The words blurred together as I kept reading, the room spinning. My breath came in shallow gasps. Whoever wrote this had experienced what I was going through. And worse. Asterisk, they had been trapped star. I turned the pages, desperate for answers, for anything that might help me. The handwriting grew more erratic, more unhinged. The last entry read, Asterisk is not me anymore. It's wearing my face. It's wearing all of our faces. And it will never let us go. I don't know if I'm alive or dead anymore. It doesn't matter. We're all trapped. There's only one way out, but I don't know if I can do it. I think I can hear it now. Footsteps coming closer. Asterisk. I closed the journal and dropped it, my hand shaking uncontrollably. The attic felt smaller now, suffocating, like the walls were closing in. I wanted to scream, but my throat was tight, the air too thick to breathe. That's when I heard it. The footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from below. I stood frozen in place, my heart threatening to tear through my chest. I didn't want to go down there, not after what I had just read, but I couldn't ignore it. I had to see. I made my way to the stairs, each creak of the old wood underfoot louder than the last. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was watching me, urging me to go further. I reached the bottom of the stairs, but the living room was empty, except for the figure. It stood by the window, its back to me, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I could barely make it out in the dim light, but I knew it wasn't just a shadow. It turned slowly, its face pale, lifeless, its eyes too wide, too empty. And the smile, that grin, that impossible grin. I'm you, it whispered, its voice a distorted echo of my own. I've always been you. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It reached out toward me, its hand twisting in the air like a puppet's. And as it touched my arm, a coldness shot through me, deep into my bones. And then everything went black. When I woke up, I was outside. The night air felt crisp against my skin, the sky clear above me. The house loomed behind me, silent and dark. But I couldn't escape the feeling. That thing was still there, and it was waiting. I didn't know how I got outside. One minute I was in that house, face to face with whatever it was that had been haunting me for weeks, and the next, I was standing on the sidewalk in front of the house, gasping for air like I had just run miles. The night was eerily still. The air had a chill that seemed to cut right through my jacket, but it wasn't just the cold that made me shiver. Something was wrong. I could feel it. The silence, the emptiness. It was suffocating. I turned back to look at the house. It was exactly as it had been before, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was alive, watching me, waiting for me to make my next move. I had to leave. But the thought of turning my back on that house, leaving it behind, felt wrong. The house, whatever had been happening inside it, had become a part of me, as twisted as that thought was. I had to know. I had to understand. I needed to go back, to find a way to end this, even if I didn't know how. But something stopped me. A low, creaking sound echoed from behind me, like the house was shifting, stretching. The same sound I'd heard from the attic, the same noise that always seemed to follow me when I was in there. My blood ran cold, and I slowly turned back around. I expected to see the house, dark and still, but it wasn't empty. Standing in the window, watching me from behind the glass, was that thing that looked like me, but wasn't me. Its smile stretched wide across its face, its eyes hollow and lifeless. And just as before, it didn't speak. It didn't need to. It was all in the eyes. The message in that stare was clear. It was waiting for me to return. I felt my stomach drop to my feet. My body screamed at me to run, to get in my car and drive as far away as I could. But my legs felt like lead, rooted to the ground. The cold air seemed to close in around me, suffocating. That thing was still watching. I backed away, heart hammering in my chest. Every step felt wrong, like I was being pulled closer to it, pulled toward the house, no matter how hard I tried to fight it. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to face whatever was waiting for me inside. But something in my gut told me I had no choice. As I turned to leave, a faint sound, soft, barely there, reached my ears. It was a whisper as though carried on the wind, but it was so clear, so unmistakable. Come back. I froze, my blood running cold. The voice, it wasn't my own. It wasn't anyone I recognized, but it was familiar, too familiar. The whisper started again, louder this time, growing more insistent, more demanding. I felt like I was losing my mind. Come back to me, come back to us. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand there, hearing those voices call me back into that house. I turned and ran, sprinting down the street, heart racing. But as I ran, it felt like the darkness was closing in, like the very ground beneath me was shifting, pulling me back toward that house. The thing was still there. It wasn't going to stop until I went back, until I returned. And in the back of my mind, I knew it was already too late. I finally reached my car, the engine roaring to life as I slammed the door shut. I peeled out of there as fast as I could, my tires screeching on the pavement. But as I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw something that made my stomach churn. The house, still there, but now the lights were on, flickering. And standing in the window, behind that cracked glass, was a thing. Its face was pressed against the window now, its features distorted in a grotesque imitation of my own. It was smiling. I looked away, my hands shaking on the wheel as I sped down the road. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I drove for hours, through the night, until the sun began to rise, washing the world in pale gray light. But as the daylight touched my skin, I still felt that pull, that cold, invisible hand reaching out to me, dragging me back toward that house, toward that thing. I thought I was safe, but deep down I knew the truth. I would never be free. And one day I'd go back, because it was waiting. It was always waiting. The thing with my face. The thing that had been in the house long before me. The thing that would be in the house long after I was gone. And maybe that's the scariest part of all, because in the end, we never really leave. Not when we've been claimed.